Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tech Leaders Launchpad livestream. My name is Andrew Murphy, and this is a live stream where we talk about technology leadership and everything adjacent to that. I started this live stream because 15 years ago, I became a leader and there wasn't anybody to help me. There weren't the books, there weren't the websites, there weren't the resources, there weren't the Slack groups that we have nowadays. And so I figured that when I got to a place where I can share my journey, I should do that. And I should also share the people who helped and mentored me and who I learned a lot from. And so I started these live streams to give you the benefit of the mentors, coaches, and people in my network. Speaking of which, today we are talking about unsticking your career with Lars Klint. Lars, your LinkedIn profile, it says that you are an Arcana magician, community champion, Microsoft Azure MVP, and YouTube creator. Is there anything you don't do?
I don't do a lot of singing.
That's a shame.
Unfortunate
that seems like
results with that. Yeah, it's people like their glass hole not shattered. No, it's I like doing things and then I guess we'll get into a whole lot of that, but it's I am not very good at being bored. Too much, well, sometimes to my detriment, but it's very rewarding. So yeah, I just like putting myself out there and trying new things and doing the thing. So
yeah, that's good. I approve. I applaud. I think a lot of us get shaped in the boxes that we make for ourselves, and sometimes kind of breaking those sides of those boxes and exploring what's out there can be fun and interesting and different. If you've got any questions or comments while we're going through this live stream, please feel free to post them on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're watching this, and we will ask the questions to Lars. Typically what happens, I've got a bunch of pre-prepared questions and topics to talk about with Lars, but after about 20 or 30 minutes, your comments and questions, dear viewers, are so much more interesting than anything I thought about. So we move on to just us having a chat. So speaking of which, let's start off with one of my prepared questions.
Well, hang on. There are people that didn't bring cake, Andrew. People did not bring cake, and I thought we had agreed on this early on. Yeah, okay, I guess we can continue.
Yeah, Zach, I'm afraid that's not good enough. We got so many people. Yeah.
That's good.
Cool. All right. We were talking about this in the we kind of have a bit of a green room before the live stream. I kind of just talk to the guests and we have a chat. We check the tech set up. And one of the things I normally do is pre-prepare the guests on this particular question so that they can think of a fun and interesting answer. I didn't do that with Lars because I know that you probably have 1,000 answers to this and you've got to think of the one that's the most interesting. So go for it. What's your favorite tech gadget that isn't?
I can only do one? Damn it. I just got this. I haven't started using yet. That's not my favorite, but I thought I'll just let people know that exists. No, it's, believe it or not, it's a lawnmower. I know. I'm become that guy, right? Middle-aged dude. Oh yeah, I like my lawnmower. No, not quite actually. It's a robot lawnmower, and already there, like I've won the internet. Like it's a robot, right? So the cool thing about this is that it saves me time, and we'll get into a lot more of this. That is probably the number one reason that I love it, is that it saves me so much time. Close number two, it's a robot. But the whole idea is that I have about 1.5 acres of lawn, or give or take, right? We live on a farm.
Wow.
There's lawn. And when I say lawn, it's like farm lawn. Like it's not a golf course. So, don't be too impressed. It's just there's grass everywhere. And having this mower that I spent a lot of time mapping things out to get it going, because it's technology. You use an app, you tell it where to go, where not to go, etc. But once you've planned it all, and so after a few weeks you dial it in, I almost don't touch it. I clean it once in a while, and it just mows, and it looks amazing. The grass is healthier. I am happier because I don't have to do mowing, and it's a robot. No, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So does it integrate with any smart home stuff, or is it all its own little ecosystem?
Yeah, so this is one of the things, obviously, if you follow me on YouTube, I do a ton of stuff with home automation, especially Home Assistant, which is my go-to tool or platform. And I always say, like, oh, can we get into Home Assistant? Can we get into Home Assistant? And I'll say half the time I'm successful, roughly. Actually, my next video coming out this week is on a trail cam, and I tried getting that into Home Assistant, but that I couldn't do that either. So there's always sort of hit and miss, and the robot mower is one of them. I am talking to the company though, and they're sort of like, yeah, we should do that. And then there's lots of other people on various forums that go, you know, you definitely should. Because there's once you're in that ecosystem, sorry, not ecosystem, but in that world of IoT and home automation, you just want everything automated. So I could
Yeah,
start
it's
based
so
on
addictive.
soil sensors and weather and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
It's so addictive. I got into home automation because I had solar panels, and that I was able to get into Home Assistant. I had my whole house ducted aircon system that I got into Home Assistant, and then I was like, okay, I've got an Ethereum mining box. How can I do this such that when I have excess solar power, it turns on the Ethereum miner? And I got into all that kind of automation. It's
Wow.
very addictive if you're a nerd.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Can I get my mower to mine Bitcoin? No, never mind.
I mean, to
Yeah.
be fair, you generally don't want the mower mining anything. You kind of, yeah, if it's mining something, it's having
Yeah,
a
exactly.
time.
Oh, gadgets are fun. I have many.
Yeah. Yeah. We can see a lot of them behind you.
Yeah,
Cool. All right, let's get to the meat of what we're going to talk about today. Lars and I first met in person in Porto, in Portugal, at the NDC Porto conference.
and we do live in almost the same city.
Sorry, go on.
But we had to go to Portugal to meet. So
I always talk about how I talk about how small the Melbourne tech scene is, and then you go a little bit outside of Melbourne to the people that live in the sticks, and they tend to not go anywhere. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a dig for people who don't live near Melbourne. It's this black hole of a city that sucks everybody in, and you get people like Lars who live in the outskirts who try and not be sucked in by the black hole.
I resist.
Yeah. So Lars, you did a talk at the NDC conference where it was entitled "Turning Dreaming into Doing: A Life Manual for Nerds." So apart from the ChatGPT generated title, do you want to tell us about what the talk actually was and what you were discussing, etc.?
Yeah, it wasn't actually generated by ChatGPT. I'm the first to admit if it was. No, it wasn't, because I've done that talk in various versions a few times, even before ChatGPT came out, right? It's one of those talks that doesn't it doesn't really
I stand
age.
corrected.
So no, it's all good. So what was the question? I forgot the question now.
Tell me about the talk. What was it about, etc., etc.
All right, but yeah, sorry. So the talk is so over the, like, say, the past 10 years in particular, sort of when I started putting myself forward and organizing events and all that sort of stuff, people started asking, okay, how can I do this thing you're doing? Or I want to do this thing, how can you help? Or there was all these questions around people wanting to know more, do more, have more time, and get some help in doing those things. And I thought, well, I should probably put this together in a talk. I had done a couple of other sort of, people skill, human skill talks before, even though I'm very much a technologist. But we tend often as nerds to kind of ignore that side of things because we're so focused on the tech. And I had great success with it. So I did this talk, which is, a life manual for nerds, basically about why are you not how do I explain this without sounding a bit arrogant? Like, why are you not as successful as someone else, right? How are you not achieving the same things? And why are you not getting the same fulfillment as other people are that you see around you? And I know the grass is always greener. And especially if you start looking at social media, people are like, no, don't do that, because it's just like a tiny snapshot. But there was still something that I can contribute. So I did this talk about, in particular, goal setting, but also about how do you try and cut away all the rubbish that we invariably sort of adopt, the routines that we get into, those sort of things. And that was sort of where the talk came from. And I'd like to say I've done that talk at least 10 times so far. And every time I get really good conversations, I try and poke people a bit so they get out of their comfort zone. And there's one of my favorite things to say is in that talk as well, but we might get to that.
Yeah, I love the conversations at the end. Like, I think the best talks are when it's, the most of the meat of the actionability comes at the end. I think a lot of people try and shove everything into, say, the first 30 minutes of a 60-minute slot, and it's like that's the knowledge transfer. That's kind of when you're setting up the mental models. The actual behavior change happens in the second 30 minutes when you're kind of discussing it as a group, and what does it mean for me, or how can I action this, what does it mean for my life? And that's where the Q&A comes in.
Yeah, it's one of those talks that if I don't get people to interact and participate, it's like a 15-minute talk. Like, it's very much having it's a fluid talk. Yeah, I go through certain topics, but it's never the same talk twice, right?
Yeah, that's the best types of talks. So, like, I was kind of thinking, how can I distill that talk into a nugget that would kind of lose all of the flavor and meaning, so that you could then tell us what the flavor and meaning is. And so this is kind of the nugget that I came up with, which is set goals and work hard to reach them. It seems basic, but why do you need to do a talk about that? Or why is it? Why aren't people just doing that already?
And you kind of hit the nail there right on the head, because so I didn't know this, but before this, we Andrew and I talked. He sent me like a few pointers, and he said, "Oh, someone commented on your YouTube video." I'm like, "What YouTube video?" And then he put up a recording of it, and there was someone that said, "Oh, this is just waffling," or "This is just," what was the other one? What was it? Hustle.
Promoting hustle culture. Promoting hustle culture.
Yeah. So and I'm like, yeah, but well, if you just did it, it isn't. It's sort of those, like, it sounds so easy, right? And it's such a simple concept of saying, well, just set a goal and do it. But no one does. Like, no one does. Otherwise, it's one of those things. Oh, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, kind of thing, right? To use an old cliche. But if you start getting into a routine and a habit of setting these goals for what you want to achieve, it becomes part of your being. It becomes part of what you do anyway. Then it becomes easy. But no one does. People always goes, "Yeah, I've got goals. I have goals," and I sort of drill them on, and especially in these talks. And okay, well, so is it a goal, or are you just dreaming, right? Because often people say, yeah, no, I want to pay off my mortgage. And I go, "Oh, that's great. Brilliant. By what date?" And they go, "What do you mean by what date?" I'm like, "Well, when is your goal complete?" "Oh, when I paid off my mortgage." I'm like, "That's not a goal. You just wishy-washy, dreamy thing," right? And people have trouble transitioning from this sort of thought process of talking to your other half or your parents or whoever, and go, "Oh yeah, I want to do this and I want to do that, and it'd be great if we do this," but they never take the step of making it an actionable thing. And if you don't do that, what's the point? Like, you never get anywhere else. And that's the thing that I've learned over at least the last 15 years. Because I mean, I'm not perfect at this either, right? But I just realized that if I do these goal setting exercises and I follow through, and part of that, believe it or not, is actually writing it down with a pen on paper. Because every time you put something in an Excel spreadsheet and go, "Oh, look, here's my goal sheet," and then it gets filed away on OneDrive or wherever, right? And we never look at it again. If you write it down, and it's a physical thing, you put it on your fridge or wherever. I actually have it. Fiona's office is just in the other side, and she has the goals on her wall, and we have them down the house as well, because then you look at them and you get reminded of what it is, why you're doing the thing right now. Oh, it's because I want to achieve this thing or whatever, and it becomes a much more real thing. But it's just the little tiny things that make it actionable. People never do. So yeah, it's super simple, but no one does it. Right? So that's where the talk came from. The work hard bit is, yeah, it sounds like, oh, but you need to slave all the time and work long hours. That's not the point of the working hard. The working hard is that now you know where you're headed, and that means that you can focus on these things. And it makes it much easier to say no to other things and get rid of things. Because if you know where your long-term goal is, you can, at this point in time, you go, should I spend time on doing this project? Is it going to benefit any of the stuff I really want to do? Yes or no, right? And it's not always a clear yes or no, but it gives you an idea of whether you should spend time on it or not. And it's very liberating. I like it a lot.
I like that idea of making it physical and tactile. I love whiteboards. I'm a massive fan of whiteboards. I have way too many whiteboards, and what I like about them is putting them in prominent places in the house. So next to our dining table is a massive whiteboard, and that whiteboard has lots of things on it, some of which are kind of daily to-dos and chores, and some of which are more kind of life
Any
goals
UML
and
diagrams?
focused activities. And no, although I did start drawing a data diagram, and my wife got bored and walked away. But
yeah, I'm good at that.
I couldn't persuade her. But yeah, that idea of what I like about having the whiteboard there is you see it constantly. You're kind of reminding yourself of what this goal is constantly, because it's there physically in your face. Whereas, like you're saying, if it's digital and it's kind of filed away somewhere, you lose it. We talk a lot on the live streams, and this seems to come up every single live stream, about this concept of conscious decision making. We often default into decisions that we're not even realizing we're making, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to encourage people to do here. Again, is to kind of take control over the decisions of the way that they spend their time.
My favorite word for that is intentional. Be intentional about the actions and the decisions you make, and don't just sort of go, yeah, I'll do it, whatever. Like if you get to that point, it's like, well, why are you doing it? Like, what was the purpose of you? Is it just to shut someone up? It's be intentional about your actions. And again, I mean, it's very easy for me to sit here and say it, but I have actually lived through it as well. And once you become intentional, say no, and instead of saying no, I can't do it, just say no, I won't do it, because here are the reasons. It's not that I can't. Of course I can, but I won't do it because it's either not worth my time, it's not going to benefit, the end result that you think it is, or it's just not in line with what I'm trying to do. And I think that's totally fine. I'm a people pleaser by person, and I've found this very difficult because I always say yes to people. But once you have this idea of what my time is valuable to, so when I spend it on something, is it going to benefit any of the things that I want to do? Is it going to benefit the people that I think need to hear it, or whatever it might be? Right? But be intentional about that action. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's a really powerful point. If you're not intentional, you just drift everywhere, and you also lose focus of the reasons why you're doing the things. And I think a lot of people say they can't because they're afraid of hurting people's feelings by saying won't.
Oh yeah,
and often and having that focused reason why, I think, takes some of the sting out of saying can't, out of won't, because you're giving people a reason. You're explaining to them why.
You don't have to give a reason either. Like, it's your time. Right? It's a bit like when someone sends you an email. They are expecting a reply, and I think that's not fair because they sent the email. They're requesting your time. I may or may not reply to that email. It's a bit the same. You're not obliged to reply to an email just because someone sent it. That's not how the world works. Right? But some people say, oh, no, if I don't reply to think I don't like him or whatever. No, it's just that you chose to spend your time on something else. And it's the same. If you get into a mindset of, and I've learned this from Fiona, my other half, she's a life coach as well, is that if you try to, see, I did it. I even said it. If you eliminate the word try from your vocabulary, it's very powerful. Because it's people, what happens, when people say, oh yeah, I'll try and make it on Saturday. The immediate reaction, or the immediate context they said, is that I might not. I have an excuse now because I never said I would. Right? And it lets everybody down. And it's such an ingrained part of our culture. And I say, I'll try my best. No, you'll do your best. Don't try. It's almost like Yoda, right? There is no try. It's not quite like that, but it's a very powerful way of mentally adjusting to making your time valuable as well as other people's time, right? every time I do a piece of content, I'm very mindful of the people watching it and spending their time watching my content. So I got to make it as efficient and as, as useful as I possibly can. And it's get into that mindset of value time, because we all have the same amount of time. And what was the other thing you said, which just triggered me as well? I can't remember now. Bugger.
I'm sure it will come back. All right, we've had a couple of comments. Gibran, here's his digital cake. He's found the cake emoji. We can all celebrate. Thank you, Gibran. Also asked the question, turning dreaming into doing, is this a book or an article on the internet? No, it's a talk that Lars has done in many places and has been recorded. Yeah. I'll post the link to the YouTube video. Understandably, I'm pretty occupied right now doing the live stream, but once I've done the live stream, I'll post it on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can watch it. I think you lose a little bit from watching the video as opposed to being there. Like we were saying, it's a lot of the value is in the conversation, not just the content. But I think you can get a lot of value out of it still from
at least you get the conversation, most of it. There should be microphones going around, so I think you get both sides. But it's one of those talks where people ask for the slides, and I just go, no. What's the point of getting the slides? Like, it's not going to help you anything. So, no, it's I don't know if I came up with turning dreaming into doing. It sounds pretty generic, but that was what I called it.
It's a good title. I like it. So you talked just a minute ago about how people's time is valuable and being conscious of the content you put out and making sure it's actionable. I often say that my job on these live streams is to do exactly that. It's to take the advice that my guests are giving and ensure that people can action it at the end of this live stream. And we don't just have an hour-long TED Talk. We've actually got something actionable that people can do. So let's turn it to that and ask the very, very specific question, lads. Give me an example of a goal that you have set and how you use the model yourself in order to make it happen.
All right. So do you want to talk cars or YouTube? Those are the two immediate examples.
You pick.
I pick. Okay. I might do both. Let's see how we go. So I'm into cars. I love cars. I love everything about them. I love very loud, very smelly, very fast cars. It's just in my blood, I think. And one of the things is I've had, since I moved to Australia from Denmark about 20 years ago, Australia is the Australia is the land of the V8. Very appealing. V8 being, as it has a specific sound, a specific, there's just a lot of cultural surroundings around the V8. And I've had a few in my time. So at one point we decided as a family that we need a 7-seater car because there's often at least 5 of us in it. But sometimes there's more. And we want one that is for long trips. It cannot be a minivan because that's when you've given up on life. That's just my opinion. I'm sorry, people with a Kia Carnival, but it's the end. And it has to be fast. It has to be extremely comfortable. And it must be, it doesn't have to be a V8, but that was sort of in my head, right? And we did a lot of research first. So before we even get to the goal setting, we wanted to be very specific about what car. So not just something, just not just go out to a dealer's yard and go, oh, that one looks good. No, be very intentional about the choice. So Fiona used to work as a vehicle research analyst. So that's her game. She knows how to find things and what to look for and all that stuff. And we ended up going through a few different cars and we ended up with this Mercedes GL63. And they're like $250,000 from new. And we're like, that's never going to happen. Like, what? What? Right. So, but it's more like, but this is the right car. So we're like, okay, how do we make this happen? So we set up goals around, okay, well, we need to, I think we set up like an 18 months timeline or something to try and figure out how to finance it, how to find the right one. What we'd look for, like low kilometers, and what would the interior look like. All those things were written down very specifically. And I then we then worked towards it, right? And we had sort of gates in that goals or milestones where we sort of go, okay, are we on the right track? Are we even getting closer? And we ended up then buying one that was 7 years old instead, but it had extremely low kilometers. It was basically owned by a guy that was afraid to drive it because he didn't want to get a dirty kind of, attention to detail to it. So it was just a perfect car for it. And it has, as one of my friends has called it, the perfect red strip club interior. So it's I don't know, I love it. I think it looks fantastic, but I can see what he's saying. It's, it's got white leather interior, it's got red mats all throughout, it's just, I love it. It is not for everybody, but it's my goal, so it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. And that made it real, right? We made it happen. And it was not the way we intended to make it happen. It actually took us 6 weeks to get it here, going through all sorts of channels. But we got it. We still got it. And that was just, it's extremely rewarding when you then go, we actually managed to get this car. And we did not pay $250,000 for it. That would just be ridiculous. But it's just, once you set your mind to it, and this is an important part of our existence. This is how we like to travel. We go a lot interstate for family and other things. So we need something that's really comfortable for 5 people to go on a long journey. And that we just made it happen due to that.
So it sounds like you had this massive goal that took you 18 months to get there, and you set those milestones up as you were going. Why are those milestones important?
Well, the milestones are important because if you say, oh, I'm going to set a goal and it's going to be something that you can achieve in a week, then it's not really a goal, right? It's just something it's like low hanging fruit. You got to, in my opinion, you got to push yourself a little bit more. So if you have goals that are sort of over a year or even 6 months, it's very easy to lose track of it and sort of go on the daily grind. You go, oh, I'm going to go pick up the kids as well. And there's some food you got to do, and all the things that are every day that everybody has to do, those get in the way. But if you have milestones, you go, oh, we're only a month away from doing that part of it. Well, you can celebrate that milestone. You go, well, I'm actually a third of the way now, or I'm a quarter of the way, or whatever, right? And make sure you celebrate it. Take time out to say, well, we did it. And don't just celebrate. Don't make them too easy, like just because you want a freebie or whatever. No, make them actual milestone achievements. And then that means that you celebrate yourself. You get a little boost because you did it. You set a goal. You did the work, even though everything else around you was, mad and whatever it is in our everyday life. But you did it. And we did that too. And I was talking about YouTube, and that was when I started doing YouTube about 2 years ago, 2 and a bit years ago. I was like, no, I'm going to do this properly, right? I'm going to do it, or I'm not going to do it. And I said, no, I'm going to release a video every 2 weeks. That was my immediate goal over a year. So 26 videos in a year. And I'm going to grow my audience. So my initial goal was 1,000 subscribers because that's when you can monetize it. And then I achieved that. I think it was 3 months early, actually. And I said, no, I want 10,000 subscribers by the end of next year. And then I actually achieved that 4 months early as well. So like having those quantitative goals is super important because you know where you're headed. You know exactly what you're working towards. And even though you think, oh, I can't always put a number or something on it that's distinct, I can achieve it. I bet you can. Like it's looking at things a different way. It's just really important because otherwise you don't know when you're reaching that goal.
I like the idea of kind of quantitative goals because they are often the ones that are the targets, and what shifts and changes are the strategies that you use to get those targets. And I think like having this understanding of the thing you want to achieve and why you want to achieve it gives you the flexibility to change your strategies. Whereas if you're fixated on a particular strategy as opposed to the goal, you might not ever reach the thing you're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, unlikely. The journey always changes. That's just the nature of it. And then you adjust. And there's nothing wrong with adjusting goals when it's intentional. You go, actually, I thought I could do it in a year. I can't. It's going to be 3 years. All right, let's readjust. Let's figure out how do we do it in 3 then. That's totally fine. It just means that you are adapting to circumstances, right?
Yeah. It's funny how a lot of the stuff we kind of do in our daily lives, we forget to apply. The stuff that we do in our work lives, we forget to apply to our daily lives. Like a lot of what you're talking about here is, setting targets and being agile in your approach and setting milestones. This is what we do as jobs.
I know.
As technologists, we do all of this stuff with what we create. Why do we not apply it to our personal lives?
Well, I have a good theory, and this is based on what people say in these talks, is that I need to wind down. I need to relax, right? It becomes an excuse. I totally get it. Everybody needs to. You need to sort of unplug a little bit. But yeah, I was sort of alluding to it at the start. Like, what is it that people in today, what do you do when you unwind? Maybe we get people in the comments to sort of just give their thing. Like, what do you do when you, on a Tuesday evening, the kids have just gone to bed or whatever, you come from work, dinner's done. What do you do? What's your wind down? Like, let's see if we can get some replies in the comments here, because that would be more interesting. And cue elevator music.
While we're waiting for that, I'll tell you my answer. So
yeah,
I used to be somebody who, when I was a kid, I got into this industry because I loved writing code. Like, it was my hobby, and then my hobby became my career. And unfortunately, when my hobby became my career, I kind of lost it as a hobby. So I kind of spent 15 years of my career only ever writing code as a job and never kind of writing it for fun. One of the things that I really like about where my career is now that my job is not writing code, I've got my hobby back. And so, like, I actually write code for fun now, because I don't write it for 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday.
That's a good one.
But we'll talk about the way I write code after we go through some of the comments. So TJ said, video games or sports?
Oh wow, Ben's already on it. It's so I hear what TJ's saying, and sports is an important part of a lot of cultures, and I appreciate that. The problem I have with especially TD or TV, let's call it TV. It's a bit blurry now, right? Is that we need to have an end to it, right? And this is one of the reasons that I always kind of pick on Netflix, because Netflix is one of those things that is designed to keep you there, right? And people go, "Oh, have you seen the show on the whatever?" I was like, "No, I haven't." I had a conversation with someone else 2 days ago, and they're like, "Oh, this Black Mirror show about us." I don't even know what that is. He's like, "Oh no, you need to watch. If you only watch one, you need to watch that series." I'm like, "I'm not going to." Right? It's a conscious choice for me to not spend time on that, because my problem with that is that you don't. Yes, you might make you relax, but you don't actually get anything in return, really. And it never ends. The problem is that so I do this in the talk. I do this calculation for people, like, okay, what's your favorite show? And they go, oh, whatever, something. Okay, how many seasons? Oh, there's 6 seasons. Okay, how many shows in each season? Oh, there's 12. Or how long is an episode roughly? 45 minutes. And you do the maths, and you've already spent, I don't know how many hours. Like, I can't do it off the top of my head, but say 16 hours on this. I was like, okay, and what'd you get out of it? Like, what was your end result? And they're like, what do you mean? I relaxed. Yeah. So why couldn't you have done that with a movie that takes an hour and a half? And there's often people, like, there's some people that go, oh yeah, that's a good point. Or people get really defensive about it, or many things, right? So when TJ says, oh, he's got to run. Bugger. I was going to give you the answer, TJ. Is that when you say video games or sports, it's a bit the same in my head. Like, they don't, unless you can time box it, unless you're really disciplined, that's cool. Who said, no, I'm going to do an hour of it, but most people can't. Then that is just another outlet of things. So personally, instead, what I do is I will build a Lego set, for example, right? Because it makes me relax. It makes me appreciate engineering. That's just me, my nerdy brain, right? It's something I can do with my son. We can build it together. You don't have to do it all in one go, because there's different packets or pages or whatever. You can divide it up. But there's many other things. I like, listening to an audiobook, or It could be writing an article, but that's not really relaxing. I get that. But whatever it is that you find that you can get into a flow that sort of releases some of that, daily grind is really important. And I just don't think that TV is the answer. I think that's our easy out. And that's just me, right? Says he who makes YouTube videos. But I know, I get the dichotomy.
Yeah, I like that idea of what are you doing that's kind of feeling productive, but still, I still think there's a place for this kind of complete kind of giving up of mental state. But you're right in that I think it has to be again intentional around when you do it. One of the things that I encourage people to do who want to do that is actually book time in their calendar for doing that kind of thing. Thursday night is my TV night, and I booked it in my calendar. It's 3 hours of TV, and I'm going to do it. And then you don't do it another night.
Yep, that's not a bad idea. If you're a calendar person, sure. Yep, but
I'm a massive calendar person.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you got to find a way that works. Is a win-win. Yes, it makes you do something you really enjoy and something that you think is worth your time, but also it's got to be limited, right? Because otherwise it just becomes one of those things where you go, oh, I should have done that on Tuesday. It's now Friday, but yeah, okay, right? You get into that whole mentality, and it's just, I don't think it's healthy. And it's like, we go back to the guy that said hustle culture. It's like, no, it isn't. It's not about hustling all the time. We're not talking about Silicon Valley, Facebook type environment. We're talking about you having joy and fulfillment in your existence, right? That's really what it's about.
Yeah. I said I was going to loop back to my programming as a hobby thing. So what I run a business. Like I run Tech Leaders Launchpad, online training courses, platform for doing that kind of stuff. My job is not writing code, but I find it fun. And so the times and the places where the intersection of those two things can occur are really enjoyable for me. And there's an interesting side conversation about how being a founder, sometimes you've got to not do the things you enjoy because you kind of get the same effect. But I like to find those interactions, and the way that I've counterbalanced my personal relaxation time and my focus time on the things that truly move the needle in the business is to go, okay, well, on an evening in my relaxation time, if I can find some programming stuff to do that moves the business forward a tiny little bit, but I could never justify doing it 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, then hey, I might as well do that because it's fun. And so, for example, when I first launched Tech Leaders Launchpad, it was built on WordPress. All of the training courses were in WordPress. All of the e-commerce payment functionality was done through WordPress. And I was just like, this is the quickest thing to get something live, but it's not the best user experience. It's not the best stability. It's not the best kind of, long-term solution, but it was the right short-term solution. And so I said to myself, okay, in your relaxation time on an evening, rebuild the whole thing, not using WordPress. I could never justify as a business doing that 9 to 5. But if I find it fun and I'm doing it on an evening and it's something that is useful and productive for the business as a byproduct, am I doing that or watching Netflix? I'd much rather write the code.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the whole game, is to find the things that do make you happy, that are enjoyable. And not everything's going to be that, because that's not how the world works. But in general, and it's the same in my day job, right? I am an advocate. I talk about the products that we have. And like yesterday, I was up in Sydney and I did a talk at the AI tour for Microsoft. And it's like, this is my job. This is amazing, right? I love doing this. And I've worked really hard to get to a point where people appreciated that I can create content and I can make a difference for, talking to developers or writing a piece of code that explains a thing, right? But it's it's been a journey through many years, and it's, as you said, I can't do it 9 to 5. I do it all the time. It's just that I find different ways of expressing that, and I like it. I'm very happy doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, good. We've got a comment from Ben. On the evening, turn off the work laptop, turn on the personal one, and look for GitHub projects I can fork and play with. Gets me full of ideas and sometime focusing somewhere else. Yeah, I personally like the idea. If you enjoy doing that, if that's something that brings you joy, I think that's a great way to relax, and it has the byproduct of sharpening your skills, which is always good.
You can also use GitHub, not GitHub, ChatGPT for that, because it'll give you ideas for really random stuff, and you go, that's not a bad idea, and you can get really cool ideas from that to do weird stuff that you never thought of. So I like that, Ben. That's a really good idea. If that's your thing, and a lot of us do eat and breathe code, right? So
yeah, I'm guessing a lot of the people, a lot of my viewers will be in that place where they, like me, started coding for fun and it became their career. And I think it's great when you can still keep your hobby. I really struggled with keeping it as a hobby when I had it as my career, but it's excellent if you can do that.
Home automation.
We've got a comment from Gibran. Yeah, well, I should. Lars, you and I have never talked about this in our personal time. I should show you my HA setup because I am very proud of it.
I like it.
Gibran, what about doing AI projects on GitHub? Yeah, I mean, you've got to ask the question: are you truly motivated to do this thing, or are you just doing it because it's the latest hot thing? And is it really gonna, like, kind of going back to what your longer term goals are? What are you trying to achieve by doing that, and being honest with yourself?
Yeah, I'll take a different spin on it. I think so. I've been using Copilot quite a lot in GitHub Copilot for VS Code especially, and I found that ideas I had of like, it'd be cool if I had an app that did this, or a website that does that, or whatever, right? You can get that done real quick in a rudimentary way using Copilot, for example, or say AI. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Gibran, but that's sort of what triggered my thinking, and it's really rewarding because if you do like coding, you can sort of go, I want to do an app that some little game or something, and it'll help you along the way, and it's going to get it wrong. Copilot is not perfect, but you can tell it what's wrong, and it'll sort of go, I can see that, I'll fix it for you. And you learn so much from it. If you read the code that comes out of it, you learn so much as well, and you get a product really quickly. So yeah, if that's your thing, go for it. I'd say it's really rewarding. You can do it in an evening even as well.
Excellent. Okay, let's go through. Often when we set goals for ourselves, we can sometimes end up with goals that are conflicting. Like, for example, I've got a newborn, well, not newborn now, he's 15 months old. Wow, 15 months, I blinked. And I'm starting a business at the same time as having a 15-month-old son. And so I've kind of got these two conflicting goals in my life, which are, I want my business to be successful, which means I have to make a lot of conscious, intentional decisions there. But I also want to be present for my son. And one thing I often say is, I don't ever want to be afraid if my wife says, I'm off for a week on holiday and I've got to look after my son entirely by myself. Like, I want that to only evoke happy emotions, not fear emotions. And so, those two are quite conflicting goals. How do you deal with those things existing?
That's a very good question, because I think this is something that everybody, no matter who, experience in one way or another, whether you have kids or not. There's always conflicting priorities, I guess, and aims that you want out of it. So my son's 9, and as much as I can, I involve him in what I do. I want him to be confident standing on a stage talking to people, because it's one of the best skills, in my opinion, you can use absolutely anywhere. And if you have ideas, the best way to get your ideas heard is to talk to people, right? So That's one of the skills I want to enforce in him. So I've brought him to conferences. I haven't quite have him on stage yet, but he knows what I do when I'm there. When I do YouTube videos, he's often either on camera or in the room helping me unpack a thing or installing or whatever, so that he's part of it. But it's not always the case. And there are certainly times where I go, no, I have these long-term goals and this is part of it. And I need to do this now. And I explain to him that it'll be an hour and a half. So you need to do something on your own, because part of my parenting is also, I want him to see that I'm putting effort into what I like and what I love, right? It's not all about him, but I'm doing it because of him as well. So that he understands that, yes, I can't be there all the time, but it's not that I don't want to be with him. It's because I have to do these other things so that we can enjoy other things together, right? But it is a fine balance, and it's hard to get right. It's really, really difficult, and it's probably different from most people. So it's a lot of trial and error. But I'd say if you involve your kids in whatever you do, well, they become interested in it, most likely, not always, and it becomes time together as well as you actually doing other things. So it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's something that I think more and more about as my son gets older and older, and you know, as he reaches an age where he's starting to understand what's happening around him, is, you know, how do I make sure he has a happy life? And I often think in life we're constantly making trade-offs between present self and future self, and a lot of the decisions we're making are, am I going to sacrifice present Andrew for future Andrew, or am I going to sacrifice future Andrew for present Andrew? And you know, there's often no way you can satisfy both.
No, there isn't. But if you know where you're going, and if you know what your goal is for say the next 12 months, right? You can sort of go, well, I have to, in order to achieve this, which will give us these other benefits that we want to, you know, have in our lives, I probably need to do this now, right? It becomes an easier decision of whether to do it or not. Now, the problem is if you have goals that are exclusively for you only, right? If you have goals that are only benefiting you and not your family or whoever you're around, sometimes that can become a problem, because you will almost discard everything else. So there's a balance. And as Thomas is saying, if you want to put that comment up, Thomas is saying balancing the conflicting goals become his own goal. And you're absolutely right. It does. It's okay, how do I make sure that I spend time with people I care about, as well as, you know, spending time on the things I need to do. So yeah, it's not easy.
You glossed over this earlier, and you kind of glossed over it a little bit just then, but I really want to nail a pin to something you just said, which is the difference between setting your goals and setting goals as a family. And, you know, implicit in a lot of what you were saying are most of your goals are family goals. How do you decide whether, you know, as a family, this is something we're going to achieve together? Where does that line sit for you? Are your wife's goals your goals, or your goals your, like, how does that whole thing work?
So we have one overarching goal, which is probably about 3 to 5 years, depending on how you look at the timeline, right? Because the milestones, you're very aware it's a bit fluid. There's some greater powers that we can't control that influence it. But because we have that quite massive overarching goal, most of the private or personal goals we have kind of fits in with that, because that's the journey that we want to be on together, means that we can form our individual journeys as well. And you might not always have that. But I think it's important that you look after yourself, and you make sure that you're happy in what, you know, your fulfillment and your life that you're pursuing. But at the same time, that you have at least conversations around how this goal is going. I keep saying goals. Sounds a bit mechanical, but you need to talk to conversations around how this will shape what the future will look like. Right? Most people, and I am generalizing, but I'm going to say most people will work 9 to 5 so they can have time off on the weekend, right? It's just what we brought up. It's a cultural thing. It's what we learn at school. And I just think there's so many other ways that you can shape your everyday. And if you just live in that grind of trying to earn money to pay off your credit cards. You can buy new suits. You can go to your jobs. You can earn money to pay off, etc. Right? It just becomes you just don't have time. You have no mental energy to get out of that. And therefore, we need to find other ways of communicating, talking to the people that matter, and say, well, what is it we are trying to do? Are we just going to live here till we're 60 doing the same thing, or are we wanting to do something different, right? And it's having those conversations starts conditioning your mind to thinking outside of what society says you have to do.
Yeah. My wife and I have many conversations about what we want our life to be like in 20 years' time and what we want our life to be like in 10 years' time. And they form the nexus of all of the decision making and the goal setting. Well, if that's what we want our life to be like, then this is what we need to do in order to achieve that. And again, you know, those difference between sacrificing present and future self. I take Monday mornings off entirely. I don't work Monday mornings, and I spend that entire sort of 6 hours with my son. And it's a very conscious sacrifice of the success of my business. If I worked, you know, that's 10% of my week that I deliberately don't dedicate to the business in order to achieve another life goal that I have. And yeah, this trade-off I think is really important. We're rapidly reaching time. This has been a really fascinating conversation, Lars. Do you want to let the people know the various places they can find more about you, what you do kind of personally, professionally? You've mentioned your YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want to kind of nail that?
Sure. I mean, I love the YouTube part of my journey. It's an outlet creatively for me to do all the things I'm not allowed to do at work or can't fit in. So I, play with different ways of recording and narrative and storytelling and devices and gadgets and all sorts. And it's just my name on YouTube. I have a little light bulb as an icon. And the so my role with Arcana is sort of an advocacy thing, which means I tend to present in a lot of places. I'm focusing on domestic now in Australia. So I've been traveling all over the world for about a decade. But now I'm sort of bringing it a bit back, doing more domestic events like yesterday in Sydney. Next week I'm at NDC in Sydney as well, in Sydney. And I'm going to be doing a serverless days in Auckland and Sydney in May, as well as Slash New, which is a community conference in Newcastle of all places, up in New South Wales. And whatever else the world might brings. But yeah, you can find me at larsklint.com. It's probably the easiest. And or on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere. It's kind of what I do.
Everywhere. I didn't know about Slash New. I'm gonna have to have a look at that.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's really cool.
So great. So this is the next live stream that we have coming up, which is Anwan Simmons from cool. GitHub.
I've seen Andrew, and he did the keynote at NDC Oslo. He is a pretty awesome dude. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm really pumped. We're going to be talking about hiring successful engineering teams, the kind of things that you forget to think about when you're hiring as a tech leader. That's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. If you want to make sure you're going to get that in your inbox, LinkedIn is not a great platform for streaming, which if you're watching this on LinkedIn, you've probably already realized. So I will be posting a link to the YouTube, which I suggest you watch it on instead of LinkedIn, or subscribe to the email newsletter, and you will get an email with the link. So yeah, thank you very much, Lars, for joining me. I had a really great time chatting with you, and I'm sure at the very least we'll be seeing each other at DDD Melbourne in about a month's time.
Oh yeah, I'm doing that too. I organized that event. I forgot that.
Because you do too much stuff. That's the problem.
No, thanks for having me, Andrew. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, everybody. I will see you in the next Tech Launchpad live stream.